Hello, welcome to When the Smoke Clears. I am the Recovery Plug. What's happening, man? Hope you guys are doing great today. I know I'm doing just fine. Check this out, man. Before we get this video podcast started, if you would please join me in a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer for the addict who still suffers and for those of us who are still bound down to some sort of struggle that keeps us from moving forward in our lives today, man. So yeah, if you would please join me in a moment of silence. God, grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. All right, well, check this out, man. You like my shades? They're pretty cool, right? Now, I just thought I'd throw these on just for the video, you know, I thought they were pretty cool. But anyway, just to change things up a little bit, right? Well, check this out. You know, what I wanted to talk to you guys today is about something that I got a few people asked me a question, and in different times, right? And it just happens to be, they wanted to know what kind of yoga that I practiced, and what kind of, was it like meditating or what, right? So I wanted to talk to you guys about that and just kind of give a little bit of a history, in a sense, kind of what it means to practice yoga and what one is to do during that process, and how it can be beneficial to, you know, oneself or to oneself journey in spirituality, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these pretty cool glasses off and replace them with these things that I can't do with those, right? And it's so check this out, man. You know, I've been practicing yoga for a good little bit, right? And it's has been, you know, part of my it has been part of my physical fitness type thing, right? And you know, kind of getting into this spiritual Zen mode, if you will, right? And that's how I started, right? That's how I started, and I didn't really. To me, it was just, you know, part of my workout, right? And it wasn't anything that that I didn't look past that. You know what I mean? And not until I started on this journey of spirituality did I figure out how potent and how effective yoga can be in incorporating that into your meditation, because meditation is part of a yoga. You know what I mean? It all correlates into this one manifestation of this energy. You know what I mean? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read you a few points that I wrote down to kind of let you know the yoga that I practice currently in my spirituality today. And what that is I practice the Bhakti yoga. And what Bhakti yoga comes from the Vedic traditions and that originate from India and that sort of thing, because ultimately that's where yoga started, right? And you know, there's four parts to that. You know what I mean? And so when somebody asks, oh, well, what kind of yoga do you practice? Then you could, in that retrospect, in the Vedic traditions, there's a few different ones, and there's four major ones, right? And that's the Bhakti yoga, the Dhyana yoga or Raja yoga, the Jnana yoga or Gayana yoga, and the Karma yoga. So that's the four. And the Karma yoga is an action yoga. In other words, Karma yoga is something that you're doing physically and mindfully, that you're doing things like to help others, or you're, you know, letting go of that, you know, materialistic type things. You know what I mean? In other words, you're in a sense practicing good merit. You know what I'm saying? and that is a yoga in itself, is to live that way. You know what I mean? So this is something that you'll be practicing throughout your day. You know what I'm saying? And which is a pretty hard thing to do. You know what I mean? A lot of people in today's world have a hard time lending a hand, or doing things for others without expecting some sort of reward. You know what I mean? Doing it just out of the goodness of your heart, as if you're doing this for God, right? That's basically what you're doing here. And these 4 yogas, man, it is really practicing to come into contact with oneself, acknowledging that, knowing you as a person, both physically and internally. You know what I mean? And then practicing in that way so that you have this connection to the divine energy, right? And that is basically you're doing all these things to praise the divine. You know what I mean? And so yoga is a very divine way of practicing. It's literally practicing your divinity, in a sense. You know what I'm saying? So in other words, and another thing is the Jnana yoga, which is based on the knowledge yoga. And this is not something that is like what you're getting out of a book knowledge, in a sense. This is more knowledge of knowing the outer and inner self of oneself. You know what I mean? And practicing in search of that, so that you can connect both of those things to that divine energy. And the Raja or Dhyana yoga is meditation, and that is the control of the body, the breath, the mind, the desires, and removing the ego. You know what I mean? And that's what that is. And that is a pretty good, and a lot of that practice there is more into that, where you're just the quote unquote typical, how you imagine a yoga, somebody just sitting cross-legged, straight back, and doing this right here, right, with the eyes kind of closed or whatever. But in all actuality, well, let me get back to that. But then the next yoga is the Bhakti yoga, which is the participation yoga. And this is a participation yoga. It's a yoga of devotion. It's a yoga of love. It's a yoga of participating, devoting, and showing love for the divine energy and that divine being, and doing this in a cultivated way with your group of same and like-minded people. You know what I mean? So this is not unlike the Raja, the Dhyana yoga, which is to control the body, mind, and breath, and that sort of thing, is more of a secluded. Like you want to be in a secluded environment with no distractions, because the mind is agitated by a lot of things all the time. So that's where you're trying to work on that. You know what I mean? And so it's a chore, really, to practice all these yogas in your daily life. And that's ultimately what you want to try to do. That's ultimately why the people of the Vedic traditions and that sort of thing they believe that you should practice this way, and and that's how you get elevated in your spiritual journey. You know what I mean? And these things are stepping stones. You know what I mean? It's not like you can just jump into all 4. You know what I mean? It's a little bit harder than that, because you have to practice each one, and then each one gets you to the next level, and the next level, and the next level, right? So it's really cool, man. But ultimately you're trying to purify what they call the Atma, which is The Atma meaning the mind, the body, and the soul. You know what I mean? So that's where you're trying to go with this. And during all of these, it's well, in the Dhyana Raja one, where you're just secluded, you could be in your room, you could be out in the wilderness, whatever, without as many minimal distractions, right? That's basically what you want to try to do here with that. And that's getting to a point where you're maintaining clarity. Obviously you're focused, you're sitting cross-legged with your back straight, and a lot of people do it where they close their eyes and they meditate, and I'm guilty of that too. You know what I mean? Because it's I've practiced like that for a long time, but to come to find out that you're supposed to really, as you're sitting there cross-legged with your back straight and in your position, you're focusing on the tip of your nose. So basically it looks like you have your eyes closed, but you don't. You know what I mean? And the reason that you're focusing on the tip of the nose is just because of that, because of the mind gets so agitated that you go through thoughts and thoughts and thoughts and thoughts, you know what I mean? Just one thought after another. And the whole purpose of this practice is to minimize the thoughts. You know what I mean? So you're trying to think one thing and try and lapse that time from one thought to the next as much as you can. And by focusing on something like the tip of the nose is why they recommend that, and that's in the Bhagavad Gita. It actually tells you in the Bhagavad Gita book that that's how you should practice. You know what I mean? So I adopted that, and that's how I'm doing it now. You know what I mean? And then the one that the yoga that I practice right now currently, more than any of those, is both the Raja and the Bhakti yoga. And the Bhakti yoga is participating, man. It's participating and chanting mantras, and specifically the Hare Krishna mantra, which is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And this particular mantra, according to the traditions and the stories, that used to be the way to chant these mantras just for the elite. In a sense, you had to be of a certain family, you had to be royalty, right? In a sense, let's just throw that out there. And so like the regular Joe couldn't do this, you know what I'm saying? So they had this, I don't know exactly how it happened, but it happened to where they said, you know what, this should be for everyone. Like everyone should be able to do this practice, you know what I mean? And in turn there, the Hare Krishna mantra was born, and that is for you and for me. You know what I mean? That's for us. You know what I'm saying? That is for the people of this toxic world that we live in, this generation that we live in now. And man, let me tell you, dude, that mantra, I kind of was skeptical, right? I was skeptical when I first, got into this, and the more that I did, the more that I got into it, the more things that happened, and it's something that really works. You know what I mean? And I don't know about anybody else, but it works for me. You know what I'm saying? And there's even been some studies done, and that are published in some journals, and medical journals and that sort of thing, that the Hare Krishna mantra has helped people with anxiety, with stress, with PTSD, that sort of thing. So it is a powerful mantra that is been used for thousands of years. You know what I mean? And it is something that the ancient folks knew, and they used, and it worked, and it kind of went by the wayside, at one point, and it merged back up during the 1960s here in the United States. You know what I mean? And I don't know if you guys, I don't know if you guys know the George Harrison and the group, the Beatles, and they have they kind of popularized, I guess, because of George Harrison and the song My Sweet Lord, and with that whole movement back then, and they kind of elevated it, you know what I mean? And it just blew up. And now, and today it's starting to really grow in today's world, because a lot of people, man, they're looking for a spiritual connection. You know what I mean? They're looking for something that has been missing in their lives, and everything that they've done so far up to this point hasn't worked. And I've been victim to that. You know what I mean? I've been victim to that. That I've tried many different types of things to try to better my life, to try to remove the suffering of whatever it is that I was suffering from. And in my case, it just happens to be quite a few things. You know what I mean? And just to name a few: the drug addiction, the alcoholism, the PTSDs, the childhood traumatic experiences, the depression, the suicidal thoughts, all those kinds of things. It wasn't until I started doing this spiritual practice that I was able to, really feel like I'm free, and I don't have those strongholds. I know that they're still there. You know what I mean? By no means have they, are they gone, or will they ever be gone? You know what I mean? Those kind of things stay dormant in somebody's life, but to be able to navigate your life and pick and choose a way to move forward without having those things hold you down is, for me, has only been this spiritual practice. And this yoga has been one of the, yogas and meditations have been one of the, strongest things that I've ever had to, that I've put in practice in my own life, and they work, you know what I mean? So yeah, so I just wanted to, throw that out there today, because some people, they had asked me about it, and, asking me what kind of, yogas and meditations I practiced, and so I figured, I said, well, you know what, I'm gonna do a little video about it, and kind of, throw that out there, and hopefully that it may help somebody, and somebody may want to adopt those practices, you know what I mean? And it's very, it's nothing that's really hard to do, you know what I mean? It's really not. You just have to be consistent in the practice. Number one, you got to be open-minded, willing, and truthful about where you want to go with your life, you know what I mean? And doing that and letting those curtains down and getting into a state of compassion for oneself, and being vulnerable to the new ideas and that sort of thing is critical. You know what I mean? Because ultimately, it's if you want to change, there's got to be sometimes some drastic things that have to happen, and you got to be willing to change people, places, and things a lot of times. You know what I mean? And I just found in my journey that has helped. You know what I mean? So so I just wanted to kind of throw that out there and give you guys a little bit of some insight on that, and how I do that in my personal journey, and perhaps maybe you guys would want to adopt some of those things. And I hope that I didn't butcher the whole definitions and all that stuff. So if any of you guys out there practice Bhakti yoga, or any of the other yogas and stuff that I've mentioned, if I maybe didn't explain something right, leave me a comment and that sort of thing, because hey, you know what, I'm learning as I go, and I don't know everything about the spiritual practices that I do, but I'm on that journey of learning, you know what I mean? Learning and practicing, and I've mentioned many times before, when I say things on my podcast, I say things that I personally have practiced, and things that I've read up on and researched and actually done, you know what I mean? I'm not giving you, insight on something that I don't know, you know what I mean, or that I'm just guessing at. So I've been currently practicing in that stuff, and I find it very helpful, man. You know what I mean, and it's been really a powerful journey, to be honest with you, and I really like it, and I'm going to continue to adopt that. You know what I mean, and if there's other things that come up that I adopt, that I know that work and that sort of thing, well, you know what, I'm going to share that with you guys. So I figured that I'd be doing a disservice to myself and to you if I wouldn't share the things that work for me, man. So that's the whole purpose of the videos, is to help out, person who's struggling just like I was at one point in time in my life, and continue to struggle with a lot of things, you know what I mean? But because I'm constantly and continually, practicing things like this, it allows me to leave all of those things, all of those sufferings and adversities dormant, man, because that's where they need to stay to continue moving forward and practicing, good practices to stay in touch with that divine energy, man. You know what I mean? And that's ultimately what we need to do in this life, I think. That's just my own opinion, you know what I'm saying? So, at any rate, I really, wanted to just, get that out there today and see, hopefully it helps somebody, man. So, I guess that's going to be it for today's video, man. So check it out, man. If you would, please, at this time, give me a thumbs up, hit me a comment, hit that bell, hit the subscribe button. Just know that when you do hit that subscribe button, it doesn't cost you a thing, but you will be helping out another veteran, another homeless person, another person dealing with PTSDs, childhood traumatic experiences, drug addiction, alcoholism, depression, suicidal thoughts, all those types of things, my friends, because I have dealt with all of that stuff at one point in time in my life. And guess what, man? I know a way out. And my way out could be your way out. So anyway, until the next time, when the smoke clears, I am the recovery plug.